Hello, I'm talking to you. This is Goddess of Science Biology, and I'm Mrs. Bolvin. And today we're going to talk about cell growth in part one of my cellular respiration series. Okay, so most cells are less than 100 micrometers, and that little strange U with a tail is the Greek letter mu, which stands for micro. If you wonder how many micrometers, um, how small a micrometer is, if you take a meter and divide it into 1,000 little pieces, that would give you millimeters. If you take 1 millimeter and divide that into 1,000 little pieces, that will give you a micrometer or a micron. Just to kind of give you an idea, most people, the hair on their head is about 8 microns wide, just about there, just to kind of give you an idea. So there are some factors that limit how big a cell can get. We're not made up of like 2 really big cells. We have literally trillions of cells. So the first thing that limits cell size is surface area to volume ratio. And this is a lot easier if you think about cells as nice, neat little cubes, because cubes are really easy to figure out the surface area and the volume. Most cells are not nice, neat little cubes, far from it, but this kind of illustrates the point a little bit better. So imagine the cells that we're going to talk about in the shape of a cube. So the surface area of the cube, I'm sure you remember from some math class you had somewhere along the line, is the length times the width, which gives you the surface area of one side, but because it's a cube, it has 6 sides, so you multiply that by 6. Surface area equals 6 times the length times the width. So, for example, if you have a cell that is a cube shape that has 1 micron on either side, that means that it is 1 times 1 times 6, which is 6 microns squared, or micrometers squared. And the reason you get a square unit here is because you're multiplying micrometers by micrometers. Okay, so the volume of that cell, and you probably learned this somewhere along the line as well, volume of a regular solid square typish object is length times width times height, or in this case, because they're all exactly the same, length times width times height, you could just say the length cubed. So to figure out the volume of this cell, it would be 1 cubed, or 1 cubic micron. Okay, so to figure out surface area to volume ratio, it's just a fraction. Don't get all like in a tweak about this. It's just a fraction. So you put the surface area on the top and you put the volume on the bottom and divide that out and you end up with 6. Okay, so what's the big whoop with that? Well, stay tuned, people. Okay, so don't have a math freak out here. I know that biology really doesn't have a whole lot of math in it, but there's a little bit here and it's not going to kill you to do it. So now you need to calculate the surface area to volume ratio of a cubic cell that's 2 microns on the size. Use the same process that I just used. Pause this video and see if you can work out the answers. When you're ready, unpause the video and then I'll show you what the answer is. Okay, hopefully you're back from a nice pause and doing some really great math. You got to stretch those math muscles every now and again, even in biology class. So surface area is 6 times the length times the width. Well, in this case, the length times the width is 2. So 6 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 6 is 24. So the surface area is 24 microns squared, or micrometers squared. The volume is going to be just the length of one side cubed. So 2 microns cubed is 8 cubic microns. Okay, we're not done yet. We have to have the surface area to volume ratio, so we're going to take 24 and divide it by 8, and that gives us 3. So by doubling the size, we've actually cut the surface area to volume ratio in half. I wonder if that holds true all the time. So Math Alert goes on. So now you need to calculate the surface area to volume ratio of a cubic cell that's 4 microns on a side. So now we've quadrupled the size of each side from the very first one that we did. See if you can do it. Again, pause the video and see if you can work it out on your own. And hopefully when you're successful, you can check back in and I'll take you through the math. Okay, go ahead. Give it a pause. Okay, so we're back. So surface area, again, same formula, 6 times length times width, but this time we have 6 times 4 times 4, which is 96 square micrometers, micrometers squared. And figuring out the volume, 4 squared. So we have 4 times 4 is 16 times 4 is 48. No, it's 64. Ooh, that's why I shouldn't do math in my head. 64. Now let's see what happens when we put this guy into the formula. So we get 96 divided by 64. So now we're down to 1.5 is our ratio. So it's getting smaller the bigger the cell gets. So what does that mean? So as the cell gets bigger, the volume increases much, much faster than the surface area does. And you say, yeah, so what's the big deal there? So if you have lots of volume, that means you're going to have lots and lots of organelles inside there. Lots of organelles means that you need a lot of raw materials to feed those organelles. When the surface area, when the volume increases faster than the surface area, that means that there's probably going to come a point when there's not enough surface area to diffuse food through for tons of organelles. Imagine as if you had to get all of your food through a cocktail straw. You know, not even a regular straw, like the teeny, like a coffee stirrer even. Maybe you are more, you can relate to that a little bit more. Tiny little straw. And if you were working really hard and exercising and running and all kinds of stuff, using a lot of energy, would you get enough through that tiny little straw to be able to keep yourself alive and to keep you doing it? Probably not. So it's the same way with cells, because the only way they really get stuff is if it can come in through the membrane. But if the membrane isn't expanding at the same size as the volume is, at the same time that the volume is at the same rate, then there's going to come a point where you just cannot physically diffuse things through that membrane to feed the organelles inside. So the second reason that cells don't get really, really big is transport of substances. Diffusion has its own rate. You cannot make diffusion go faster. It has one rate. It doesn't matter if the cell is a centimeter, a meter, a mile. Diffusion has its own rate. You can't speed it up. Large cells can't diffuse stuff fast enough to get from one place to the next in the cell, and a lot of the nutrients are moved around by diffusion because, remember, it's passive transport. It doesn't require any energy. So if you have a really big cell, that means that you have a lot further to move things in order to get it to the place that it needs to be used. The other point is communication. So most cells have one nucleus. That nucleus is kind of responsible for making everything happen in the cell. To be able to do that, they have to be able to get information about what's going on in the cell so that the nucleus can say, oh, you need to make, cyclin right now or whatever. So it's really important that those messages can get to the nucleus, and the information, the reply, can get back to the part of the cell as quickly as possible. And again, they have to go by diffusion. If you have a really, really, really long distance to go, it's not going to happen in a meaningful amount of time. So because the cell only has a nucleus, it has to send and receive messages very, very quickly. Big cells, that's not going to happen because diffusion doesn't speed up just because you want it to. If it's too big, the communication can't happen. So the three reasons are surface area to volume ratio. You won't have enough surface area to feed a large volume of organelles. Not going to be able to move stuff around in the cell quick enough. And the cell is not going to be able to have meaningful communication with all parts of it if it gets too large. Okay, well, thanks for joining me. Have a great day.